Hello and welcome to this wonderful place that we call Grazing Brains. Disclaimer: this is a fictional story about real scientists. All the science and historical dates are accurate. However, the events and some of the characters are entirely fictional. Valentine opened the old heavy door with extreme caution, as she did whenever she entered the chaotic maze. After decades of marriage to Jean, she could not convince him to organize his office. "It is unorganized chaos. I know where every book or paper is located," unapologetically explained Jean. "In that corner," pointed towards a pile of around 15 books with different thicknesses and color covers placed near one of the room's corners, "you can find The Principle of Psychology, written by William James and published in 1890, several editions of the Psychological Bulletin, and other books conveying the American school of thoughts about psychology. On this side here," pointing towards two piles made of books and binders full of papers, one of the pile was placed on the floor near his desk, while the other was sitting on his desk. The two piles were taller than her. It was a miracle that they were still standing. "You can find anything related to the European school of thought, like Human and Animal Psychology by Wilhelm Wundt from 1812 edition. I prefer to have the books handy when I'm working on a topic." And there, pointing at the pile of papers covering half of the massive and only window in his tiny office, "there are my drawings of mollusks, including some of my papers on the subject." It was a few years after they got married, almost a lifetime ago. Back then, she thought that she could change this small annoying behavior of his. Oh, how naive she was. She stopped trying a few years after Lucine was born. She developed techniques to ignore this part of her husband's life. The pile with mollusks paper was still there, much bigger than before. Her husband's obsession with mollusks was as strong as when I was 15 years old, and he published his first paper on them. Although she managed to contain their spreading in a few of the rooms, the house was full of them. She stopped counting after the 500. At least his fascination with birds died a long time ago, sometimes after he published his first essay about the albino sparrow when he was only 11 years old. Mollusks she could tolerate, but stuffed dead birds, it was out of the question. His bizarre fascination with philosophy and zoology had pushed him towards psychology. He was one of her teachers in the J. Rousseau School in Geneva. She fell in love with his mind and abstract thinking when they met. He was not afraid to use his personal life as an anecdote to help his students understand concept or a theory. He gave an astonishing example of his childhood to demonstrate how easy it is to create a false memory as an adult, better known as confabulation. Also, how susceptible the kids are to manipulation and creating false memories. Children between 6 to 7 years old are the most susceptible to the phenomenon. He described how he was almost kidnapped when he was a child. He still remembered how tall the attackers were, their smell, and even their clothes, and how his nanny leaped to save him and fought them off. The problem was that this event never happened. His nanny confessed years later that she had made up this event, and yet he still remembered it. Oscar Wilde put it best when Cicely said, "It usually chronicles the things that have never happened, and couldn't possibly have happened referring to our memories. His passion for teaching and education attracted her to him, and even after so many years, his brain and way of thinking did not stop fascinating her. In contrast, his chaotic office, it is the opposite. But what can be done? There are no perfect people in the world. So, she tried to spend less possible time in his office. The room was depressing her and making her claustrophobic. She liked rooms with a lot of light, minimum furniture, and nothing out of the place. All items in the house were placed so that, upon entering each room, a person could breathe and not worry that something would fall upon them. The tea room was her favorite place, and every family member knew that if there was guests in the room, everyone's behavior should be perfect. No dirty clothes, or running up and down on the stairs, and for sure, no shouts or cries. She almost forgot why she came into the office. Just notes about children's cognitive development she needed. She gathered all the notes about the studies to try to put them in order, so finally they could put everything in writing and publish it. So many years they spent writing and researching this topic, and she wanted to see everything, all the information and studies in one book. They first started noticing and taking notes of specific behaviors that observed with Jacqueline and then with Lucine and Lauren. Their kids were the primary subject of the study. Her sister thought that using their own kids as test subjects was awful parenting, and she used all possible opportunities to tell her how disgusted she was. But Valentin and Jean always thought that if they had kids at home, why should they go to the institute and interview other people's kids? Plus, they were spending more time with their own kids and bonding with them, a win-win situation in her books. It took her more than 15 minutes to locate and collect all the notes and relevant papers. Jean Piaget came home relatively early that day. It was a few minutes past 3 p.m. when he crossed the house entrance. He found his wife in the tea room surrounded by papers. "I don't think I have ever seen this room in such a chaotic state," he commented upon entering the room. "Well, what are you doing here? Did anything happen at the International Bureau of Education?" "Nothing important. This is why I decided to come home. I had some boring meetings in the afternoon. So I decided that I prefer to spend the afternoon looking and organizing my notes here with you than listening to men complaining about money. It is always the same problem, and they always come to the same solution, despite not working. So here I am. What do you want me to do?" smiled Jean. He was dressed in a grey, slightly oversized suit. He had a chubby face with a prominent forehead. His thick black hair was thinning, but it did not look like he would go completely bald. The tiny round glasses were making him look goofy, which was not so far from his personality. He was always smiley, and you could trust him to lighten the mood of everyone if it's necessary. "Okay then, could you finish organizing the notes here? I need to finish typewriting some of the information. I am organizing them by age, not study." Saying this, she left the room. A few hours later, Valentin reappeared while Jean enjoyed his tobacco pipe. He had finished the job long ago and had spent some time with the kids after they came from school. Now, he waited patiently for his wife to finish whatever she was doing. He had learned a long time ago not to disturb her when she had a plan in her head. Do whatever she asks and wait. In those cases, the initiative was always a no-no, because in the end he always ended up giving her and himself more work than was necessary. I decided to typewrite a small summary of each of the cognitive development stages, so tomorrow, you can give them to your students, and they can gather all case studies in the university and separate them by age of the kids and their characteristics, she said, and continued by asking, would you like to read them now or after dinner? The kids are up getting ready for dinner and won't be down for the next 30 minutes. Would you mind reading it to me? My eyes are tired. Plus, I miss those first years of our marriage, when we had the entire afternoons to enjoy our time together. You were always reading to me. In response, she sat beside him on the sofa and started reading. There are 4 stages of cognitive development in children. The stages happen in consecutive order, and a stage cannot be skipped. Each stage is age-dependent, with specific characteristics that describe children's ability and intellectual development, such as knowledge, thoughts, and judgment. Although some children can go through the stages at slightly different ages, or can even show characteristics of more than one stage, in general, the 4 stages are as follows. The sensory motor stage, from birth to 2 years old. The next stage is the pre-operational stage, from 2 to 7 years old. The 3rd stage is the concrete operational stage, which happens from 7 to 11 years old. And the final is the formal operational stage, for children beyond 11 years old. I know that your students already know that, but a summary of the entire work is always a must. It is better to reiterate the information. The following pages are about each stage, with a list of characteristics and an explanation of what to expect. Please let me know if I have missed something. Jean smiled at her. She was always open to being corrected, and she never got angry. But then she was seldom wrong. It was her unique ability to be always right and never apologetic about it. Of course, my darling, as always. During the sensory motor stage, again birth to 2 years old, she started again. The children react to what is happening in their immediate surroundings. The kids learn through touch, testing, biting, and looking at this stage. Cognitively, they develop through goal-direct behavior, coordinated space, mental representation, object permanence concept, and affect relationship. Children start to understand that the object that surrounds them is not an extension of themselves, and create a boundary between what surrounds them and the self. This is the coordinated space awareness. Between 4 and 8 months, children develop the understanding that their action can affect the behavior of people around them, starting to make sounds or movements to get attention. They also develop the object permanence concept, which describes the perception that objects continue to exist even though they are hidden from their sight. Between 8 months and 1 year, the children start to explore the environment and imitate behavior. During the mental representation behavior substage, the kids start to have mental pictures or situations that are not in their immediate surroundings and can start imitate behavior they previously observed in different environments. Finally, during the coordinated space substage, the children start to associate coordination between different objects. For example, they start to understand that if they throw an object on the floor, it may break. During the first 7 to 8 months, toddlers just react to their environment. After that, they start to do things intentionally. Between the ages of 2 and 7, it is the pre-operational stage, in which 9 characteristic cognitive development exists. The symbol functioning starts to develop between 2 and 4 years old. At this substage, the children start to using symbols in communication. They also develop a mental representation of objects that may not currently exist around them. Children's perception also plays a great role in this substage. From age 4 to 7, The intuitive thought develops. Children start using logic to solve problems, but they still cannot explain their thoughts or why they think that. During the egocentrism substage, children believe that everyone sees, thinks, and feels the same way as them, and they cannot take another person's point of view and perspective. The transductive reasoning is the substage in which children start to associate events that are unrelated to each other. They can observe the cause and effect relationship, but cannot understand it completely. During this substage, children believe that objects are alive and capable of action. This is called animism. While artificialism references children's belief that the people around them control environmental objects. During this substage, children develop centration, i.e., the ability to focus on one object, but still have problem with seriation, which is the ability to classify things. Children's ability to think, reason, and problem-solving during this stage becomes more complex and abstract, and their curiosity develops. "Are you even paying attention to what I'm saying?" suddenly said Valentine, stopping her narration. "Of course I am. So closing your eyes helps you listen better then?" Not really. But who said? Listening with closed eyes is like listening with the heart. Beautiful saying indeed. But I do not need you to listen with your heart. I'm interested in your brain right now. A true gentleman would find it impossible to merely engage intellectually when graced by the presence of an angelical voice. "See, after saying these kind of things, I cannot stay mad at you," cheerfully said Valentine. "I know, this is why I say them, but we cannot digress. The kids will be down soon for dinner, and I would like to finish this before that. So, after dinner, we can enjoy the night without doing any work." Of course, the next major stage is called the concrete operational stage and happens between the age of 7 and 11, and it is mainly characterized by the logical thinking development. More logical and sophisticated thoughts replace all illogical thinking processes like artificialism and animism during this stage. The children start to have the ability to focus their attention on more than one aspect in different situations, which is called decentration. Their inductive logic gets fully developed, so they can associate that the day is when there is light and the sun is up even if clouds hide the sun. But their deductive logic is not developed yet. So, if you say to them that all birds have feathers and that goose has feathers, they still can struggle to connect that a goose is a bird. The classification is also an example of this stage. Children start to classify things by their properties and can arrange them in a specific order. The reversibility starts to develop, so children realize that if they know the path from home to school, they can go from school to home because the path is just the reverse. During this stage, the kid starts to eliminate egocentrism and start to see the world from the other people's perspective too. Finally, the formal operational stage, the final stage, starts at approximately 11 years old and lasts into the adulthood. This is the stage where kids' thinking starts to be more sophisticated. They start to use logical thinking to solve problems. Their deductive reasoning abilities are developed, and they can use general rules to determine specific outcomes. Abstract thinking has also developed, and they can plan with a long-term solution in mind. They also can guess and predict possible outcomes from an action. They start to use hypothetical thinking and use what if. This is a summary of your notes in the last few years. I have examples of what kids can and cannot do for each stage. I also separate the studies done with the children for each stage and place them on the table in the library. You can find a separate folder for our studies with our children there. This will help us organize all the notes and typewrite everything, so we can show it to the publisher, concluded Valentin. Dear, what I would have done without you. I became the luckiest man the day you agreed to marry me, affectionately said Jean. On this, we both agree. I will place these notes in your briefcase, so tomorrow you can give them to your students. You worry too much. We are almost done. In a few more years, all this information will be published. Talking about worrying, interrupted Valentin. We need to discuss what we will do with the studies we did on our children and all information related to them. Maybe it is wise to remove the files. Here, we disagree. They were a vital part of the conclusions deduction, and I think we should keep them. I agree, but there are already people slamming our methodology. They mention sample bias and the low number of children in the studies, which can affect the conclusion. They also criticize that you don't consider the influence of personality, family relationships, and any kind of individual markers. And how does removing the studies of our children it will help with those problems? Asked Jean. It is not going to help with those ones, but at least they cannot criticize further and complain that we were biased in our conclusions because they are our children. Let them look for biases on the studies. They won't find any related to our children. We wrote what we observed, nothing less, nothing more. But if this is making this head of yours worried, tomorrow I will discuss this subject with some of my colleagues. In this way, we will have a second and third opinion on the subject. Thank you. That means a lot to me. Of course, darling. Soon after, the kids' voices started coming from the stairs. Jacqueline entered first. She was the oldest. Born in 1925, she believed that she was a grown-up already. After her, Lauren, the youngest, and Lucine, the middle child, entered. Lucine and Jacqueline were only 2 years apart, and the age difference between the firstborn and the youngest was 6 years. Lauren adored Jacqueline, but she merely tolerated him. They were dressed in clean clothes and looked full of energy, as always. The nanny ran after them, apologizing for the interruption. But the kids did not care at all. They had different missions and they needed their parents. Mother, father, here you are. Ingrid said that the dinner was served. Should we move towards the dining? Asked Jacqueline. Father, look what I have found outside, excitedly shouted Lucine, taking out of her pocket a tiny coal pebble. Lucine, I ask you to leave that dirty thing outside. Garbage is not to be taken inside, said the nanny, trying to take the coal from her. It is not garbage. It is my treasure. I can do so many things with it. My dolls can use it for their dollhouse, or I can draw with it. So many possibilities, was Lucine's response, hiding the treasure behind her back. But it is only a dirty coal. There is no value in it. Plus, don't know where it had been. The streets are filthy, tried to protest the nanny. That is okay, Mary. She can keep her treasure, said Valentin. It is finders keepers, after all. Mary looked defeated, out of her comfort zone. So Jean said to her, Are we forming children who are only capable of learning what is already known? Or should we try to develop creative and innovative minds capable of discovery from the preschool age on throughout life?
This is the end of today's story. I hope that the past minutes helped you relax and ease you into falling asleep. If you are not 100% there yet, let us just do a breathing exercise. Count mentally with me your breath intakes and exhales. Concentrate on the counting, nothing more. intake for 1, 2, 3, 4, and release for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in for 1, 2, 3, 4, out for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,